Welcome to Weave It To Me, Portland District Library's latest middles art project. My name is Eileen and I'm going to be helping you through today's project, which is going to be creating these woven bowls. You should have already picked up your take and make bag here at the library. This is going to have everything that you need to complete today's project except for a pair of scissors and a writing utensil, which I recommend a pencil. So today we are going to be learning a yarn weaving technique to create these yarn woven bowls. And I'm going to be going over what's in your take and make bag and the step-by-step instructions for today's project in just a minute. So are you ready to get started? Let's get to it. Here are the 5 things that you received in your take and make bag here at the library. So you should have gotten a template which is folded in half, so we're going to unfold that. Paper plate, and then 3 different colors of yarn. 2 things that you're going to need from home are a pair of scissors and some kind of a writing utensil. I recommend a pencil, but you can use whatever you're most comfortable with. So the first step for this project and in making our yarn bowls is cutting out our template. So that's why we're going to use the pair of scissors. And this is all going to stay one piece, but we are going to cut all the way around and then those little like wedges out in between all of our little slats here. So we're just going to take our scissors and start cutting this out. I'm just cutting off all the edges to start with because that's easier for me. But again, you can do this in whatever way is easiest for you. And what we're going to do once we've cut this out is we're going to trace it onto our paper plate. And then we're going to cut out our paper plate so that we can start our weaving with our yarn and then creating our bowl in the end. So again, I'm just slowly cutting all the way around and cutting all these wedges out. And it doesn't have to be perfect, just getting the job done here. And if you feel like you're having any trouble with this part, you can ask an adult or maybe an older sibling in your household to help you. This is probably the least exciting part of the whole project. I think the weaving is the most fun part, and then actually like creating the bowl. But this is a necessary step to get us to creating our paper plate template. All right, so if you are still cutting, go ahead and pause the video. I definitely don't want to have you rush this step. So go ahead and pause the video if you're not quite done cutting, and then when you're done, you can resume watching how we put our bowls together today. So the next step, once we're done cutting our template out, is we are going to lay it on top of the paper plate. And I have the paper plate sitting upright, so just as if you were going to fill it with food to prepare to eat it. And then I'm going to lay the template right over top. And what you'll notice is it's a little bit smaller than the paper plate, just by a little bit. But go ahead and center that template on the plate. And then you're going to take that writing utensil, which in my case is my pencil, and you're just going to trace those wedges, because that's what we're going to end up cutting out of the plate. So you're going to hold down the template with one hand and trace those wedges with the other hand. And again, if you have any trouble with any of the steps in our project today, it is always recommended that you ask for some help. It is always okay to ask for help when you need it. And what I'm doing is I'm holding my template down, tracing the little wedge, and then being very careful to hold the template, but then I'm twisting the paper plate. So that's what I'm doing to make this tracing part as easy as possible for myself. And again, not a super pretty tracing job, but I know I'm cutting those pieces out. So now we are done with our template, so I'm going to set that aside. And now we have our paper plate with all of our wedges traced into it. So now I'm going to do my cutting of the paper plate. And we're just cutting those wedges right out of the paper plate. So I'm just going to take my scissors and cut 2 straight lines across my trace lines. So this is what it's going to start looking like. So far I've cut out 3 of my little wedges. And we don't need the wedges for anything, so you can recycle those when we're all done. Cut out all of my wedges, and again I'm just setting those aside because we don't need those for anything anymore. And our next step before we start weaving with our yarn colors is we have to fold all of these flaps up. So I'm going to fold and then kind of push back. They're not all going to stay up by themselves. You'll start to see that once we actually start our weaving is what will actually, the yarn is actually going to support them and have them kind of stay up and form our bowl today. But we just want to help with our yarn along here. So we're just going to fold all of our little flaps in, and you'll notice you can start to see what our bowl is going to look like. So once we're all done with our weaving, those little flaps are going to stay up to form the sides of our bowl. All right, so now here is the fun part. So we're going to take our yarn, and all of the yarn have these little paper loops around them. So you can just take those off. And this is where the art part of this project comes in. So not only are we learning how to do this weaving technique, but you also get to choose how many colors you're going to use, in what order the colors are going to go in. So you could just use one color for your entire bowl. You could create stripes using your colors. You could create 3 different stripes. You could just use 2 different and alternate. You could make the stripes thin, you can make them thick. So this is completely up to you how you want to design your bowl. And if you would prefer to watch me do the whole thing and then make your decisions, that's fine too. But how we're going to start this is you're just going to pick a color. So I'm going to start with, I think, the gray. I'm actually going to start with gray. So I have gray, pink, and teal as my yarn colors. And I'm just going to start off by kind of pulling a little bit of it free from the ball. And you're going to pick a wedge or a little flap here. And then where we cut that wedge is where you're going to thread your yarn to start with. And you want to pull it all the way down to the bottom. And you also, I'm going to flip it over, you also want to make sure that there's a little tail at the end. So for every time you switch colors and you start a new color, you're going to want a little yarn tail. And at the very end of the video, I'm going to show you what to do with these tails to kind of hide them away. Okay, so we've threaded our first color of yarn, and here's where the weaving comes into play. So how this works is it's an over-under. So for this first flap, you can see here I have my yarn and this is where it's starting. So for this first flap, I'm going over the top of the paper plate. Then this very next wedge that we cut out, I'm gonna thread it through that, but behind the flap. And then for the next wedge that we cut out, I'm gonna thread the yarn through that again, but I'm gonna pull it over the paper plate. And so I'll show you here in just a minute. We're just gonna continue this pattern of over and under. So for the next wedge, we're gonna go through, but under. And then that next wedge, we're gonna go through it, but over. So you'll see here, I've got one little flap where the yarn is over it. And then if you flip it over, it's under, over, under, over. And again, you're just gonna continue that pattern and make sure the yarn is pulled all the way down towards the base, this circle part. And then you just continue that over-under pattern throughout the whole bowl. And once you decide you have enough of your stripes created of one color and you think, oh, I want to switch colors, then we can switch colors. And again, in just a few minutes here, when I'm kind of done with this first color, because I am going to use all three of my colors, I'll show you how we transition to a new color. So now I've done my over-under weaving one time all the way around to cover up all of the flaps that we have. And now I'm just going to continue. So that one was over, under, under. And if you get confused, if you lose which, if it's over and under, just look. You can see by pulling the yarn back one, and so that one was over, under. And you really get the hang of it once you do it a couple of times through. And you'll start to see that you want to make sure your different yarn layers are sitting nice and flush together so you don't see any of the plate. And the more times you go around with your yarn, the easier it's going to be to kind of keep it pushed down. And you'll notice again that after a while we'll start to see the flaps or the sides of our bowl kind of go up a little bit. So that's just going to naturally happen as we're doing our over-under weaving. And hopefully you can kind of see. So now I've gone all the way around. So I have two complete rows of gray yarn at the bottom now. And again, I'm just going to keep going. And what I'm finding is I twist the paper plate as I go. Again, that's what's easiest for me. If you find a different technique of holding your yarn and your plate, that's great. It's the great part about doing art is sometimes you can have 2 or 3 or many different methods to have the same outcome. And our goal here is just to learn that weaving technique. All right, so now I've gone around 3 times with my gray. I'm going to go around one more time before I switch colors. So over, under, over, under. And I sometimes have to stop and just pull some of my yarn away from the ball because that helps me in kind of keeping organized here. So over, under, over, under, over, under, over. Okay, so now I've gone around with 4 stripes of gray, or 4 rows of gray, I should say. And I'm pushing my yarn all the way down, make sure it's nice and flush. And then I'm gonna flip it over. So here is my original excess yarn here from our start point. And here's where I'm ending. And I want about the same amount, so I have another tail. So I have a starting tail and an ending tail for my gray color. And now I'm gonna pick my second color to start with. So I am gonna do the teal color next. And I'm gonna set my gray aside, grab the teal, and I'm gonna go ahead and start right where I ended, just right here. So I'm gonna tuck that into the same wedge. I'm gonna pull tight, and I want another tail, starting tail for my teal here. I'm gonna pull that tight. And now I'm gonna go ahead and start with my teal color. So we've got the over, and now I'm gonna go under. And I do wanna make sure I don't pull on my other tails that are there. So we've got over, under, over, under. I'm just gonna go all the way around. All right, so I've gone all the way around once with my teal. So now we're gonna go around again. I'm gonna do even rows for mine, I think, to start with. So I'm gonna do 4 of the gray, 4 of the teal, and then I wanna do 4 of the pink and see where I'm at. And I'm pushing those rows down as I do them. Gonna make sure my tails are still looking okay underneath. Okay, so now I have 3 rows of my teal done, and I'm gonna keep going. So again, I got a little confused because I stopped. So there's an under, over, under, over. The more rows you have, the easier it is to get a little confused, and that's okay. You just saw that happen to me, so you can kind of slow down and count your rows and look at where your yarn is at. Okay, so I think I have 4 teal rows all the way around, and I do. So that means I'm gonna cut my yarn and start with my next color, which is pink. I'm gonna flip over my plate, make sure I have a tail, and give that a cut with my scissors, and then pull out my next color, the pink color. Okay, so I'm gonna pick a wedge to thread that through, flip it over and make sure I have a little tail, and then just start my over under weaving. So I'm gonna go over, under, over, under, over, under. And I do have to pull the tails a little bit tight every once in a while. And once I'm done with my pink color, I'll show you how we're gonna take care of those. And you can kind of see that now that I'm doing my third color and we're building up the sides of our bowl, as I'm pulling it tight, you can see that the edges of my paper plate are kind of curling. And that's exactly what we want to see, because as we work all the way up those flaps and create the sides of our bowl, it's just going to keep curling up and creating our bowl shape. I'm just making sure that I'm pulling my yarn tight as I'm turning and doing the over-under weaving. Okay, so now I have 4 complete rows of my pink yarn, and I'm gonna go ahead and cut another tail there. And then what I wanna do before I continue is I wanna show you how we're gonna hide those tails. And it's as easy as actually just tucking it in underneath. So what I'm gonna do is flip over my bowl, and you can see I have all my little tails. I'm gonna take one of the first ones, so the little gray one down here. I'm gonna pull it tight, and then I'm actually gonna cut mine a little bit shorter before I do this next thing. So I'm gonna cut that a little bit shorter. So here's my tail right here. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our writing utensil, which again, I have my pencil, and we're just gonna tuck it underneath. You can use your finger or your writing utensil, but we're just gonna tuck it right underneath that gray yarn. And we're just gonna hide it there. And I'll go a little bit shorter even. Pull it tight and then just tuck it right underneath, and then you won't even be able to see it. And I'm going to go ahead and cut my other gray one. I'm going to pull it tight, cut it short, and then do the same thing where I'm just going to tuck it underneath and kind of hide it under our weaving. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing with my teal, because that was my second color. So I'm going to take the starting thread and just cut it a little bit shorter. And then I'm going to take it and kind of tuck it underneath. And it just kind of blends right in to the rest of our weaving. And if you're having any trouble with that, you can ask a grown-up or an older sibling for some help maybe. And then we've got our other teal tail. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to cut it a little bit shorter and just tuck it right underneath there. We're going to do the same thing with our pink. So I'm going to take that and cut that a little bit shorter. And then go ahead and just tuck it right underneath. And then we have one more tail, and I think mine actually came. Let's see, okay, we're gonna pull that a little bit tight. Cut that. And then I'm gonna tuck it. Okay, so we have hid our tails for our first 3 colors that we've used. I'm just going to trim a little fuzzies off of there. And so now you can see that we have the outside of our bowl and the inside of our bowl. So next what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna continue my gray, teal, pink pattern that I have going on for my bowl. And once I'm done, I'm gonna show you my finished product. I'm back to show you my finished bowl. So this is all my leftover yarn. So I used all of my gray, a little bit of my pink, and quite a bit of my teal. But this is what my finished bowl is looking like. So you can see that I have all my stripes on the outside. You can see the matching stripes on the inside. The paper plate you can see is still sticking up at the top a little bit, which is what we want, because otherwise our yarn would start flapping out if we went all the way up. I've tucked in and cut shorter all of my little yarn tails, so everything is looking really clean on the outside, no excess yarn hanging about. So this is what my finished bowl looks like, and I am very excited about how it turned out. Thank you all so much for joining me today during Weave It To Me. I hope you enjoyed making your yarn woven bowls with me. I would love to see any videos or pictures of you completing today's project, and you can send those to us here at the library at the email address going across your screen now. Thanks again for joining me, and we'll see you next time for another Middles Art. Bye for now.